The dust of the Arizona frontier never quite settled, not even in the cool hush of dawn on Matthew Keene's ranch, where the wind spoke with a dry rasp, and the soil bore the scars of decades, of hooves and harvest. They called him the last farmer of Blood Creek, a man who had survived drought, bandits, and heartbreak with nothing but a stubborn spine and a mule named Ash for years. Matthew lived alone in the single-room cabin he had built with his own blistered hands, cooking beans on a cracked stove and sleeping on a cot that groaned under the weight of memory more than flesh. His wife Clara had died the spring after their first harvest, fever tearing through the valley like wildfire. She had arrived from the east with soft skin and bright faith, believing the frontier was a promise instead of a wager. Matthew buried her under the lone oak that overlooked the pasture, planting a circle of prairie, flowers around the grave that never quite outgrew the desert sun. Men came and went in Blood Creek, some hunting gold, some hunting horses, some hunting trouble. Matthew hunted silence. He didn't go to town unless Witter forced his hand, and he only spoke when he needed a tool sharpened or a sack of grain weighed. It was on one of those desperate supply trips that his life, and the land around him, changed forever. There was a traveling wagon anchored in the dust near the sheriff's office, its wheels ankle-deep in sand, its canvas flapping like the wings of some bone-torn bird. A crowd gathered around it, mostly ranchers who smelled of horse sweat and chewing tobacco, and traders who never washed anything but their boots. Matthew should have ignored them, should have gone straight to the general store, but he heard a voice that froze him mid-stride. Not words, not even sound, just the tone of a cry so full of fire that it cut through the noise of cattle, auctions, and whiskey curses. The sheriff was pacing around the wagon, sweating in his brown hat, trying to maintain order. "Calm down," he barked. "It's legal. Ain't no law say it ain't." In the center of the gathering was a cage, not a welded one, but wooden bars lashed with rope and iron nails, the kind used to move dangerous livestock. Inside, on her knees, was a woman. Her hair was braided with beads the color of river stones, her skin bronze like sun-scorched sandstone, and her eyes black and still as obsidian. Chains clasped her wrists tight, but she wasn't trembling. If anything, she looked insulted by fear itself. "Apache," someone muttered. "One of the last." Another man spat on the ground. "Should have been sent to the reservation with the rest. Don't want her kind around here." The sheriff jabbed a finger at the crowd. "She's government property. Tribal rebel. Last survivor of the Coyote Ridge camp. They want her sold to someone who'll keep her contained. That's the order." A wave of unease passed through the men like wind through grass. They didn't know whether to be angry or grateful. The reservation wars had burned through the territory only 8 winters ago. Some lost cattle, some lost sons, others lost sleep. To Matthew, the scene was the darkest form of business he'd seen on the frontier. Human trade disguised as civic duty. The woman lifted her head and looked directly at him. No blink, no flinch, just sharp, unbroken gaze. He felt something crawl up his spine that he hadn't felt since. Clara lay sick in their cabin, an ache that turned into purpose. "Auction starting at $500, the sheriff called. "She ain't trained, ain't domesticated. You buy her, you take responsibility." A man in a black duster raised a hand. $550, another, $600. "Do y'all even know what you're bidding for?" Someone snapped. "She slit your throat in your sleep." The Apache woman remained silent, her glare following every voice with judgment. Matthew never remembered raising his hand, only realizing afterward that it was in the air. 1,000. The entire crowd recoiled. The sheriff nearly choked on his spit. "Keene, you gone mad?" Matthew didn't answer him. He didn't need to. His eyes stayed fixed on hers, and something unspoken passed between them, something like memory, something like promise. The sheriff counted to 3. No one dared counter. "Sold." The word echoed across Blood Creek like a gunshot. As they unlocked her chains, the woman moved only when she chose, refusing to be dragged, refusing to hurry. She stepped beside Matthew and spoke for the first time, her voice low, her accent sharp like cut stone. "I am not cattle," she said. "I am nigh of the Soyahe." Matthew nodded once. "I don't own you." Her eyes narrowed. "Then why buy me?" He exhaled, long and tired. "Because no one else in this damn territory cares whether you live or Die, that was the beginning. Not love, not mercy. Just two wounded beasts circling the same fire, learning whether it could warm them or burn them alive. The ride back to the ranch took half the day. Matthew tried to offer her water at a rest stop near the riverbed, but she refused, kneeling to scoop water herself. She drank in silence, like someone who had long ago accepted that the world would never serve her. Ash the mule sniffed her. She didn't flinch. Instead, she cupped her hands, poured a small splash toward its mouth, and waited. The mule licked it, confused. She snorted softly, not quite amused, not quite unimpressed. When they reached the cabin, she stood in the doorway as if assessing a battlefield. Matthew suddenly felt exposed by how bare the place was. One cot, one table, a single oil lamp, and a rifle mounted high. She turned to him. "This is where you live." He shrugged. "It's enough for one," she corrected. "Not for two." She was right. Every stray plank and dusty shelf reminded him he was unprepared for company, especially her. He offered her the cot, but she refused it and slept on the floor beside the cold fireplace, arms folded, eyes half open. Even in sleep, Matthew lay awake listening to the wind slam sand against window glass, wondering what force kept her alive long enough to become the last of her people on this side of the frontier. In the days that followed, she refused to sit idle. She gathered water from the well, sorted firewood, cleaned the knife he used for slaughtering hogs, not because he asked, because she would not allow herself to be helpless. When he returned from the fields one afternoon, he found a ring of sage burned around the cabin, smoke lines drawn like protection sigils. "Coyote spirits," she said, pointing toward the hills. "They hunt lonely men." Matthew grinned despite himself. "Been hunted for years. Haven't been caught yet." Naya looked at him as though he didn't understand the game he was playing. "Spirits don't hunt bodies," she said. "They hunt hearts." He didn't have an answer for that. Maybe he didn't want one. Late that night, while the wind rattled the shutters, she sat cross-legged near the door with a handmade knife sheath, carved from scrap metal and bone. The moon washed her in silver. Matthew watched her from the cot. "Are you afraid?" She didn't look up. "No. Are you?" He thought about Clara's grave, thought about the auction, thought about the look in Naya's eyes when she asked why he bought her. "Every day," he said. She slipped the knife into her rope belt. "Good. Men without fear are dangerous. Men with fear are careful." The heat in his chest didn't feel like fear. It felt like waking up. The next morning, Matthew woke to shouting. Hooves thundered outside the cabin. 5 riders bearing rifles circled the yard. On their vests was a yellow brand, the emblem of the Hollow Creek Order, a militia gang that claimed ownership of half the frontier. One man dismounted, swaggering toward the porch. "Heard you bought yourself an Apache," he sneered. "That's against the treaty." Matthew stepped outside, boots scraping dust. "I broke no treaty." The man smirked. "You misunderstand. We don't like her kind roaming free. Last thing we need is her tribe returning." "Her tribe is gone," Matthew said. "You just don't want to admit who made them disappear."